Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we have 10 clubs that sold their best player and collapsed. Let's get into it. 10. Man United. Man United may have remained competitive in the Premier League following Cristiano Ronaldo's departure in 2009, but it very much spelled the beginning of the end of the Sir Alex Ferguson era. The Scottish manager was able to lead the club through 4 more seasons, winning the Premier League twice and finishing close runners-up on the other 2 occasions, but he was hardly helped by the club's transfer policy. The same summer they collected a record £84.6 million for Ronaldo and also lost Carlos Tevez to Man City. They spent just £24.5 million to bring in Antonio Valencia, Mame Biran-Diouf, Gabriel Obertan and Michael Owen. Valencia was the only one to make over 35 Premier League appearances for the club, and while Nani, already at Old Trafford, was effectively seen as Ronaldo's replacement, the lack of investment in the squad was telling. The following summer, their most expensive signing was Bebe at £7.9 million, and yet Ferguson somehow won the league and made the Champions League final. The club wouldn't spend over £30 million on a player until Juan Mata in 2014, by which time Ferguson had left, the midfield was almost non-existent, and the club was in the midst of a crisis under the doomed David Moyes. They wouldn't so much as finish in the top 3 until 2018, and took until 2021 to register over 70 goals in a league season. 9. Marseille. Dimitri Payet made a name for himself in France as the centre of any side he played for, contributing 16 goals for Saint-Etienne in 2010-11, 25 for Lille in 2012-13, and 23 for Marseille in 2014-15. Much of that Marseille campaign, his side were considered title challengers, holding on to the top spot until Christmas, ultimately finishing in 4th. That summer, the France international moved to West Ham, and while he was tearing up defences in East London, his former side suffered. Marseille would win just 2 of their opening 10 games in the 15-16 season, flirting with relegation. And while they found themselves in 8th by the midway point, another woeful run to round out the season, including 11 games without a win, would see them finish in an underwhelming 13th. But of course, that's not where the story ends. Payet kicked up a fuss at West Ham and managed to force a move away, rejoining Marseille in January 2017. Since Payet's return at the Stade Velodrome, the club have finished top 5 every season, with their talisman contributing 66 goals in the 4.5 years since. 8. Newcastle United. In terms of club legends, not many come bigger than Alan Shearer. Newcastle-born, the striker would eventually join the side he grew up supporting in 1996, famously turning down both Man United and Real Madrid after the Magpies paid Blackburn Rovers £15 million for his services, a world record transfer fee at the time. In 2005-06, Shearer would retire after a decade at St James's Park, so despite not technically a sale, his departure from Newcastle still preceded bad times in the North East. In his final season, 35-year-old Shearer would still end up as top scorer. Despite 14 goals being his lowest for Newcastle in an injury-free campaign, it was still enough to see them finish 7th. Newcastle finished in the top 7 5 times with Shearer, including as Premier League runners-up once, also featuring in 3 Champions League group stages. However, Mike Ashley would buy the club in 2007, and as they say, the rest is history. In the subsequent 15 seasons, they spent 2 in the Championship, finished just 3 seasons in the top half, and qualified for Europe only once. A far cry from their heyday with Shearer up top. 7. AC Milan. A giant of European football, AC Milan have been experiencing something of a trophy drought, not having won anything noteworthy since their 2010-11 triumph in Serie A. 2 of the key parts of that Scudetto winning side were centre-back Thiago Silva and striker Zlatan Ibrahimovic. 12 months later, they'd both make headlines as they moved to PSG for a combined €63 million. And while the pair were winning trophy after trophy across the Alps, harder times were coming at the San Siro. Finishing as runners-up in 2011-12, the Rossoneri would drop to 8th by 2014, experiencing a first campaign without continental football since 1998-99. They finished in the top 5 just once between 2014 and 2020, while the extent of their European endeavours was reaching the last 16 in the 2017-18 Europa League. Of course, a lot of this was brought on by financial mismanagement, with the current owners only assuming control by default after a loan they gave a Chinese investment firm to buy the club wasn't paid back. Brighter times seem to be on the horizon though. Milan are back in Europe's premier competition after finishing as Serie A runners-up last season. 6. Arsenal. Many will look to Thierry Henry's departure from Arsenal in 2007 as the moment their glorious first era under Arsene Wenger came to an end. But 2 years earlier, captain Patrick Vieira left for Juventus, following years of speculation over his future, and the results were both instant and drastic. Without the great Frenchman in midfield and with rivals Man United and Liverpool both strengthening, the Gunners quickly dropped out of title contention and capped their final season at Highbury by scraping Champions League football on the final day. It was the first time they had finished outside the top 2 in 8 years and was a sign of things to come. Despite a revival in 2007-8, in which Flamini and Fabregas went some way to replicating the solidity and thrust of Gilberto and Vieira, the Arsenal midfield never truly recovered in the long term, and it wasn't until 2015-16 that Wenger came even remotely close to the title again. 5. Aston Villa. In 2011, Aston Villa finished 9th after 3 consecutive top 6 finishes. This meant big clubs came sniffing around their talent, and that summer Stuart Downing and Ashley Young were sold to Liverpool and Man United, off the back of a combined 31 goal contributions in the Premier League. Villa chose to cash in to the tune of £38 million for 2 English talents in their mid-20s, but the lack of adequate reinvestment was evident. They would plummet to 16th in 2011-12, picking up their lowest points tally in 25 years. Even the signing of Christian Benteke, who scored 49 goals for the Villains between 2012 and 2015, couldn't take them higher than 15th before their inevitable relegation from the Premier League in 2016. Their first championship campaign saw them finish 13th, and they'd finally go back up at the third time of asking. It's looking a lot more positive for Villa these days, barely missing out on a first top half finish since the Downing Young days last campaign. Despite selling their best player again in Jack Grealish this summer, you'd argue that the club are in a far better place to deal with it than they were a decade ago. 4. Inter Milan. The 2009-10 season was arguably Inter's very best, as they won the treble. Samuel Eto'o was a key part of that side, and the subsequent season, despite the Nerazzurri finishing trophyless, took it to another level. The Cameroonian scored 37 goals in all competitions, the most in a single campaign in his career. But that summer, Eto'o's head was turned as Russian club Anzhi turned the 30-year-old into the world's highest paid player, paying him €20 million a year after agreeing a €27 million deal with Inter. And as you'd expect, his goals were sorely missed. Only Diego Milito netted double figures for the 2011-12 season, as they'd slide to 6th and out of Champions League spots for the first time since 2001. Despite having Mauro Icardi to rely on from 2013-14, other shortcomings across the pitch brought on by a loss of Champions League revenue meant they didn't finish in the top 4 again until 2018. They may have finally won the Scudetto again last season, but the sale of stars including Lukaku and Hakimi makes us fear for their short-term future once more. 3. Borussia Dortmund. The 2012-13 season, in which Borussia Dortmund lost the Champions League final, as well as prodigy Mario Götze to Bayern Munich, and also finished 25 points off their rivals in the Bundesliga, representing the beginning of an era of unprecedented Bayern dominance, ending a short period in which Jurgen Klopp's gegenpressing BVB side reigned supreme in German football. But it wasn't until the summer of 2014 that the wheels really began to fall off at the Westfalenstadion. Having run down his contract, Robert Lewandowski left for Bavaria on a free, and while Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang worked hard to replace his output, the rest of the attack collapsed around him. Marco Reus was the side's second top scorer on 7, while Immobile and Mkhitaryan netted just 3 apiece, and Aubameyang also led the assist charts on 6. Despite ranking second in the league for shots and key passes, Klopp's side lacked quality in the final third, with their XG of 1.6 a game a distinctly average return. They scored just 47 all season, down from 80 the previous campaign, and came 7th in the Bully, their lowest finish since Klopp took over in 2008. The influential coach left that summer, feeling he'd done all he could at the club, leaving Thomas Tuchel to give the side a much-needed shake-up. 2. Barcelona. Lionel Messi's earth-shattering departure from Barcelona has led many to ponder whether the historic Catalan club are in for a period of decline, and it's certainly possible. And you'd have to go back over 20 years for the last time Barca was so badly affected by a star leaving. In 2000, Luis Figo did the unthinkable and left the Camp Nou for Real Madrid, becoming Florentino Perez's first ever signing as president at the Bernabeu. The Portuguese star kicked off the Galacticos era, which began pretty well. A year on from finishing 5th, Los Blancos won La Liga in 2001, adding a Champions League and another Spanish crown in the following 2 seasons. Barca meanwhile went downhill under the presidency of Joan Gaspar, finishing outside the top 3 for 3 consecutive campaigns and falling as low as 6th in 2002-03, with Louis van Gaal's return to the dugout proving disastrous. It took the election of Joan Laporta and the arrival of the talismanic Ronaldinho to get the club back on track, and they haven't finished outside the top 3 since. But do you think they will now Messi has gone? Let us know in the comments. 1. Fiorentina. Argentina's all-time top scorer until Lionel Messi broke his record in 2016, Gabriel Batistuta is one of the greatest strikers Serie A has ever seen, with his 9-season spell at Fiorentina the stuff of legend. He scored 203 goals in 331 appearances for La Viola, impressive given they never challenged for the title, and fired them to Champions League qualification in 1999, their first entry into Europe's premier competition for 30 years. The following summer he left for Roma for €36 million, a hefty sum at the time considering he was already 31. But the move kicked off a swift downward spiral for the Florence club. The next year, as Batistuta celebrated a famous Scudetto at the Stadio Olimpico, his former club revealed the extent of their financial woes, having been unable to pay players for months on end. Not even the big money sales of Rui Costa and Francesco Toldo could balance the books, and they were relegated in 2002, with Roberto Mancini unable to keep them up in his first managerial post. The club then filed for bankruptcy, and when they were unable to find the necessary funds, were refused a place in Serie B. Liquidation followed, but by the time Batistuta retired in 2005, they were re-established and back in the top flight, where they have remained ever since. So those were our 10 clubs that sold their best player and collapsed, but can you name any more? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to Football Daily if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.